right, let's start out with some breaking news. Here's a news report from CNBC where you can see that Oracle blames salespeople for missing targets. Have you read that story?
I haven't read that.
I saw that one. I read that one.
There was a conference call about the earnings of Oracle, and Jafra Katz, she is the president and chief financial officer. She came up with this famous quote that our salespeople missed the target. Question to you, is that a good idea?
It's complete, unadulterated hogwash. How about that? If the salespeople miss their number, certainly the salespeople are to blame, but that blame doesn't stop with the salespeople, and anybody who would use that as an excuse on a conference call is just plain old ordinary wrong. Sales management's responsible, and ultimately leadership's responsible, and leadership cannot pass that off onto the salespeople. I've been to a lot of sales organizations. I know them, so do you. We've worked with them. And I walk in and say, are they getting the leadership? Are they getting the support? Have they gotten the tools? Have they gotten the training? Have they gotten the technology? Are they being coached? Do you have an offering that's competitive? Do they have the pipeline? All of these things matter. So simply to make a statement like our salespeople missed the target, well, yeah, they missed the target, but why did they miss the target? It's easy to pass that off, but anybody who's ever sold or managed or led a sales organization will laugh at that.
Well, Jeb, let's put you in the position of the advisor to Jafra Katz. What would you tell her?
Soften that language a little bit. The statement I think she said was they ran out of runway. We just ran out of runway this quarter. They didn't run out of runway. They didn't put enough fuel in the airplane to begin with. I mean, the issue is exactly as Anthony said. They're not taking the blame herself there. She's passing it off, right? She's passing the buck, and that doesn't accomplish anything.
It's worse than that, though. It's poor leadership. I mean, I've never heard a great leader come out and say, it wasn't me, it was my people. I'm laughing thinking about it. No one would ever say that. A great general says, I failed my people. You know, it starts at leadership. I went to Harvard Business School, and when I was there was a kid in the organizational development class from India, and his answer to every single problem that we ever had was, a fish rots from the head. And it made me crazy. I wanted to say, listen, that can't be every single problem. But he was right. It is every single problem. Leadership has to change whatever needs changed. Leadership has to fix whatever needs fixed. Leadership can't say, my people failed me. Well, you're the one that's supposed to do something about that.
Okay, let's do something about it. For anybody who's listening today, let's structure our program around the idea of performance management. It starts with people. Jeb, why don't you start out with giving us your best advice on how can I hire, select, recruit the best salespeople in the world?
Well, that's such a big question, right? I mean, there's so much layered in there. I think it begins with being a good place to be. If you're an attractive place to come and work, you're going to attract more talent. You're going to attract better talent. Now it's not hard to find people. You put out a request and you get more applications than you know what to do with. Then the question becomes, how do you cull through those? How do you identify those top people? And I think I've got a bias. I'm going to come at this with this bias, which is assessments. We need to get under the hood. We need to understand how these people think, what motivates them. We need to understand what drives them. Look at it looks like to me Safra back there at Oracle has some pretty weak personal accountability. I'd want to know that on the front end, right? I want to know whether a candidate is going to be accountable. But in terms of recruiting the best talent, it begins with being a good place to work. And to take it back to that article, being a place with leaders who have a sincere interest in leading their people as opposed to casting the blame, right?
Anthony, let me ask you this. You hired a lot of salespeople in your career. How do you spot a driver?
It's tricky, but I'll tell you, first I'll give you a couple of the mistakes I made. The first mistake that I made when I was very young in sales leadership was I always tried to hire experience. And for me, in my mind, the shortcut was, if they've got the exact right experience that I'm looking for, then that's going to be somebody that I can trust and that I'm not going to have to manage and lead and coach and spend a lot of time and energy on. And it turns out that that failed every time I tried it. It was exactly the opposite. The more I tried to take the shortcut, the worse my results were. I eventually learned that I like what Jeb said about having an employee value proposition. That certainly matters. But I like behavioral interviewing, and I'm more concerned with uncovering the attributes that that person possesses deep inside them than I am looking at their experience. I want to know, are they disciplined? And when you talk about a driver, I want to know what specifically they do to drive their employees. How do they execute that? When you say I hold people accountable for results, what does that mean that you hold people accountable for results? How do you develop their goals? What do you do when people aren't making their number? What did you do when you missed a number? How did you respond to that? How did you help your salespeople? I ask specific questions like that I want to understand what their beliefs and behaviors are, because beliefs and behaviors are what drive the results, not the experience. And I can't tell you how many resumes I hired that if the resume would have shown up and done the job, I would have been really happy. But the resume didn't show up and do the job. Somebody else showed up.
So there's no behavioral page that's attached to the resume that can tell you how they really behave in reality. Jeb, what role does coaching and training play once you get them on board?
100%. You know, the most successful salespeople are the ones who take that coaching and take that training seriously. They have a desire to get better. And, you know, I think it begins on day one. Onboarding is more critical than a lot of organizations give it credit for. You know, that initial, you know, getting up to speed, that initial ramp up is critical. And, you know, the more seriously your organization takes those first weeks, months, years in some cases, the longer lasting that relationship is going to be. And the easier it is to keep that sales rep in place. Now, what does onboarding look like? You know, it's making sure that you know, your new rep feels welcome. As silly and basic as that sounds, that feeling that you are part of the organization from day one is essential. And then it goes on to training and to education on the front end. I think that the mistake that is often made is that we ignore that onboarding, which means the wheels come off later on down the road.
Peter Drucker once said that culture beats strategy for lunch. How do you create that environment that will attract the top performer and actually will keep them?
I think it's about investing in individuals. I think that a culture, first off, there has to be a set of shared beliefs. And I think that unit cohesion and everybody having these same shared beliefs and the same goals and the same idea about who they are counts for so much. I have a client right now where the CEO of the company has convinced his people that they're special. They're unlike anybody else, that they create more value for everybody else. And so the standard for them has been raised like a great leader does. His standard is we create more value than anybody else. We're better than anybody else. And so the culture rejects anybody who doesn't behave that way and doesn't believe that way. They reject them themselves before anybody has to make any kind of a decision about that individual. But people generally want to do great work. They want to be part of something great. And if you can coach them and develop them and give them that opportunity to really do their best work, that's where that culture begins. But I also think that there has to be some standard that's set. And one of the mistakes that I see people make, especially in leadership roles, is that they try to build that culture, but they don't protect it. So they lower the standard for some people, and then like a little cancer, they start chipping away on the edges of that culture. And ultimately, the culture finds its way down to the lowest common denominator. So you have to either get rid of those people. If they're not true believers, they've got to go. But I think that's really where that unit cohesion and that culture starts.
Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I want to spring off of that because that's one of those things that's easier said than done. But the reality is it's critical, right? I mean, because if you've got somebody who doesn't fit, that's being, I really like that, rejected like a cancer language, you know, the rest of the organization sees it. And if you don't do anything about it, it eats away and it undermines your credibility. So I agree with Anthony 100%.
I say negativity is the only cancer that spreads by contact. And if you want to destroy a culture, let that go untreated for some period of time. As a leader, you've got to cut it out as quickly as you identify it.
So let's assume you create that culture, you give them the coaching, you give them the training, give them the opportunity, and it's a year down the road, they're great performers. And let's say you give them a $90,000 base, and they have bonus payments so they can double their salary if they reach and keep their goals. And then you find that your competition actually, not in the same town necessarily, pays them $110,000 or $120,000 base. How do you compete with that?
You don't. I mean, and what you just laid out is one of the biggest excuses I hear people make about why they don't build and develop their sales force, because they're afraid we're going to build them up and then other people are going to take them. That's exactly what you want to happen. That's exactly, you want to be a pipeline for people who want to grow and want a great place to develop. A lot of times the culture's worth staying for in the first place. A lot of times people will leave for $20,000, but a lot of great performers won't leave for the money because the culture counts for more in their home and they feel like they're a part of something. But even if you know you're going to lose people, the only choice you have to build that culture and to be effective as a sales organization is to build the best sales force that you can build. You know you're going to lose some of them anyway. But you look at companies like IBM and Xerox, they've done this for decade after decade. You know if somebody came out of those sales organizations, they were already well-versed in all of the fundamentals of effective selling and that they were going to be effective wherever they went. But they were a pipeline for that, and they built big organizations and great sales organizations by doing so.
Jeb, in your experience, can you clone top performers?
You know, I steer clear of the word clone, just because, you know, we're all unique creatures, right? That being said, I think you can replicate it. But what you're better off doing is not just looking at your top performers. And this is a common mistake. All right, I have the best performers I've ever had on my team. Let me get more people just like that. That's a fallacy. That's an error. The better approach is what's out there that's even better, right? If I have a team of A players who are really C players in my industry, I don't want to replicate them. And I very well may be going all out to do that. So I think you're better off looking at what a truly world-class, top-notch, laser-focused, out-of-this-world sales representative looks like and clone that. Figure out what could be, not what you have.
Okay, so you clone to the ideal image.
Yeah, you clone to the ideal image. I think that's a great way to put that.
Anthony, what's your take on that?
I don't know. The top, it looks like maybe, I don't know if I can use 20%, but clearly the top 10% possess some attributes and some skills that are extremely difficult to model. If we could model them, we would do it. I mean, there's no question. If it was easy to replicate, we'd replicate it. They've got business acumen. They've got situational knowledge. They tend to possess some characteristics that are very hard for us to measure. This is the part of sales where people say, sales is not an art, it's a science. And I go, yeah, okay, really? Well, then figure out how to get the rest of the 90 to look like the top 10. There's some magic and there's some voodoo in what they do, and it's really hard to replicate. So what do you do? What can you do? I think that what's changed so much about sales is you have to try to hire people not based on this criteria that says, how do I replicate or model this, but who's best prepared to serve my clients? Who's best prepared to create value for my clients? Who is going to go out and represent the company and make it easy for people to buy? And I think that's changing, especially for the 2.5 decades that I've sold or led a sales organization. Sales acumen used to weigh a lot more now, or it weighed a lot more then than it does now. Business acumen counts for a lot more now. So what I think customers want is a business person. They want somebody that understands how to make a business operate better. They want somebody that cares about them and that's going to own that outcome and be accountable for results. It's like they're hiring for somebody to be part of their management team and somebody who can be a strategic partner. And those attributes are different.
So what you're saying, in the past, we needed salespeople that were information smart, and now we need salespeople that are insight smart.
Absolutely.
And something that Anthony said is really important here. I need to hire salespeople who can represent or interface with my clients well. I can't tell you how surprising it is. We talk to a lot of sales leaders who are in the hiring mode. And it's surprising to me how many of them talk about filling a position in a way that serves them. I need my job to be easier. I need, less effort from my seat, and these salespeople need to go out and do. Well, it's not about that. It's not about reducing your work or making it easier on you. It's about delivering to your prospective clients.
You're not hiring for you. You're hiring for your clients every time. It's a flip, but it's the right decision to make.
When do we pull the trigger? At what point should sales managers decide to fire a salesperson? Jeb, you go first.
Sooner rather than later. It's an old adage, hire slow, fire fast.
Anthony, at what point should you fire a salesperson?
We're always working against a clock. We've got a quarterly goal. We've got an annual goal. We've got a number to meet. We've got a budget. We've got time. And time is so critical to us because it takes a long time to get a rep up to speed. It may take 6 months before they become productive. In some organizations, it may be a year before they're really productive. So you can't afford to let somebody linger and hang around through that period. And there's a couple things. Attitude's a given. If the attitude's not right, if they're making excuses that the performance isn't their fault, it's something else, and they're not driven by the right set of beliefs, then I think that's a surefire sign you have to let them go. It's more difficult to change someone's beliefs and their attitude than it is to change anything else. We can teach them the skills. We can give them additional coaching on how to create more value for clients, how to follow a sales process, but getting them to change what they believe in their heart of hearts is really difficult. If they believe that the only way to win is price, or if they believe that they can't succeed because the product's not good enough, any of those things are going to be something that's impossible to overcome.
Jeb, if somebody comes to you and they want to start tomorrow and they have one final question and say, Jeb, what are the 3 things that you look at before you fire a salesperson? There
are 2 questions we ask when it comes to, is it time to let somebody go? Or when we're working with clients, is it time to let somebody go? And the first one is, have I done everything that I can do for this person? To Anthony's point, have I done everything? Have I given them the training? Have I given them the support? Have I given them the coaching? Whatever it is, have I done everything I can for them? And the second question is, and this is always the clincher, would I rehire them? And if you can answer that pretty quickly, then we know that we're making the right call. So maybe it's not 3, it's 2 questions.
You want a third question just for fun?
Sure.
How happy am I that this person's going to walk across the street and work for my competitor? The happier you are, the faster you should let that person go.
Boom. I like that a lot.
Jeb, thank you for participating in this. And thank you, as always, Anthony. You are the sage of the sales profession.
Thanks, Gerhard. See you next time.
Thanks so much, Gerhard. Great fun.